So we are back with another episode of Biz Mindz, and we are here with Bree. Bree is the owner of Holistic Health, Physical Therapy, and Wellness. Thank you so much, Bree, for joining us today. Let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What led you to what you're doing right now? And where are you originally from? How'd you make your way to the Southwest Florida area?
Holy cow, that's a lot of questions.
That's all the interview questions right there.
Done. So my name is Bree. I'm a physical therapist. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and pretty quickly knew I wanted to move away from the cold. So when I was getting my doctorate, I was like, where is a warm state that I can go? So I got a couple of clinical rotations set up here in Florida, and as soon as I graduated, I moved down here. So I had been practicing down here in physical therapy for years and years and years, mostly working in outpatient orthopedics, and I fell in love with the world of pelvic floor physical therapy and, kind of went and specialized in that, developed my own pelvic floor program at my other clinic. And just kind of got to the point where I was so busy with patients at an in-network clinic and everyone was being referred to me. And I just was like, maybe I should just start my own thing. I had patients asking me every day, when are you going to just start your own business? And I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. That's too much work.
And what was it that you were specializing in?
Pelvic floor physical therapy. So most common patients I treat, like women who have just had babies, trying to help them recover, get back to exercise, get back to being able to laugh and sneeze without leaking and things like that. That's the most common thing. But then down here in Florida, we also see a lot of men who have had prostate cancer who now are having some problems after their prostate's removed. I work with couples who have pain with intercourse, endometriosis, PCOS, like all of that stuff. It's kind of a world that nobody really knows about. So I started doing that. And because of that, I became really passionate about holistic medicine, because a lot of these people, that you can't just strengthen the muscles. They also need to change their diet and the way they sleep and, and live life. So kind of led me into being a very holistic practitioner that just wanted to look at the whole body. And so in order to do that, I was like, I got to get out of this insurance, world that doesn't really support that. And I just kind of decided to start my own thing. And
when did you start your own thing?
I actually just opened the doors officially on Monday.
Really?
Yeah.
So congrats.
So I have been kind of seeing patients on the side for a while, kind of doing like my own like free phone consultations and stuff on my own for a while, that I kind of was like, I should just jump right in. So I quit my job last Friday.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I went on vacation for the 4th, and then I opened the doors like right after.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have where is it located?
So I'm in Bonita Springs,
Okay.
right behind Tokyo Bay. It's this awesome sushi place that they used to do an all-you-can-eat sushi lunch special, which is how I found the area. So I'm right behind there, just south of Old 41, kind of in between Pelican Landing. Kind of found that space. Another physical therapist has that building and was looking for holistic, like-minded practitioners to join. And I was like, all right, that sounds perfect.
Yeah.
So,
is it storefront or is it like a suite?
So it's in like a little business suite. There's a lot of businesses back there. There's chiropractors, acupuncturists, physical therapists. I think there's someone who does taxes and, a medical doctor back there. It's just a ton of different businesses. You kind of don't even realize it's there. And then you drive past the kava bar and the sushi place and you're like, oh, like there's a ton of businesses back here.
Are you there by yourself or you already have employees?
So I'm there by myself. I basically just sublease a room and I just make my own schedule, and it's been really kind of different because I used to work in a practice where there were, like 5-6 other PTs on staff. I had 2 office members.
It's all on you.
Yeah. So now it's like all me. It's like, I got to schedule. I got to call people, I got to figure out a way to do marketing on my own. So that's been really the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Wow. So you just made that leap. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was, I hate to say it was like a really rash decision. I mean, I feel like patients had been asking me if I was going to do it for a while. And then I think one weekend I was like in bed, like playing around with Canva, thinking of like a business name. And then I was like, all right, let's just get my LLC and do all of that. And then before I knew it, I sat down with my boyfriend. I'm like, hey, I'm going to open my own business. I think I'm going to put in my notice at work.
What did he say?
He was like, what? Because I'm the impulsive one. Like I really am.
So you're a risk taker.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
I don't know if it's because I'm a Sagittarius, but I'm very impulsive. I don't think about things for very long. Like once I'm set on it, I'm like, yeah, let's go get that dog, or let's buy a house. Let's do it. So I basically made my business name on Canva. I went on my computer the next day, got my LLC, and I immediately started telling people I was looking for a space.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And
It's amazing.
what was how did it, like, where were you in your mind with making that change? Because it is a big change. Is this the first time that you've been that you're a business owner?
Yeah, so this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. I think the hardest thing was I was very comfortable where I was. I had a full schedule. I mean, I was working from 7 a.m. to like 6 p.m. every single day, Monday through Friday. I had a 2-week wait list after that. I was very comfortable with the fact that I had a guaranteed income. Like I knew exactly how much I was going to be getting paid every other week. I knew I would be able to pay all my bills. And to basically say, okay, I'm going to leave this and I'm going to take this leap, and I may have 8 patients the first day, I may have 0.
Yeah.
That was definitely the scariest thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing that holds people back, though, from starting a business is like the fear of failure.
Right. And structure. You don't have structure at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. And I am a very structured person. I mean, I was a Division I athlete, biology major, chemistry minor. So I'm used to a very structured life. And to go from that life to being a PT in a practice where they schedule for me, it's very structured, to like now I have to plan everything out on my own.
Yeah.
I mean, even just like planning the work around this podcast. Like,
Right. But don't you think that's great? Because I feel like you can always go back to what, you know what I mean?
There's nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I feel like there really isn't nothing to lose.
As long as like I left on good terms, like I could.
What did they say? You're crazy?
No, I think it was one of those things where it was like, okay, like for a lot of people, like that eventually happens. As soon as you get your name, your reputation out there, a lot of people do leave and they do their own thing. And I think for me, it kind of felt like I had already done it. Like I built the pelvic health program at that clinic. So for me, I'm like, well, I kind of did already build something from the ground up. So for me, that helped convince me that I was ready to do it. I mean, obviously, like it's always sad to part ways with someone that I'd worked for them for almost 4 years. So it's always sad to part ways. But then at the same time, you're like, well, like this could be a better opportunity. But the biggest thing being a pelvic health therapist is there's only like 4 or 5 of us in the area. So there's like 7 ads out right now just looking for pelvic floor therapists.
Wow.
So I knew no matter what, I could find a job.
Right.
Whether it would pay as much as I wanted or not was a different story. But I wasn't going to be, out of a job and homeless.
Right. Did you put your 2 weeks?
So I actually had to do 30 days. In physical therapy, a lot of times you have to give more notice. And, it was kind of sad because I had patients who were on my wait list and they were booked out for months. And so I had to either have my office member or myself call them and say, hey, I know you've been on my schedule, but like I won't be here.
Are they going to follow you?
How does that work with those patients? Is there like a non-compete in place?
No. So I didn't have a non-compete. I sat down with the company to kind of talk about that because as an employee, like you don't want to be stealing patients. But then there was the other understanding that they didn't have anybody who specialized in what I did. So those patients couldn't be seen no matter what. If I was just an orthopedic therapist, it would be a different story because they can see just any other physical therapist. But because of that, they were very supportive, and they were like, we'll just send them your way. I mean, I got two faxes today that they sent over because they're like, hey, we got 2 more faxes for you. So
awesome.
they were very supportive. The patients, some of them were upset, but I just kind of gave them their options. I said, hey, like, there are some other therapists around. If you want to follow me because you were referred to me specifically, you can. This is where I am. So it did make it a little bit easier, but kind of a bummer when they're already on the schedule and ready to go.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to do your own thing? Because were you happy with where you were at?
I think I would say I was comfortable.
Okay.
I was comfortable with, I loved the people that I worked with. I was comfortable. I had built kind of like my own little space in there, my own private treatment room. But there's a level of unhappiness that comes when you realize that you were bringing in so much income for a company. And when you think about it, you're like,
Yes.
I could be bringing this in for myself because I mean, I felt like I was working a lot harder than just any old staff PT. Like I wasn't just showing up to work, seeing patients and leaving. I was answering Facebook posts for people in need of pelvic health. I was doing free phone consultations. I was marketing, stopping by places on the weekends and dropping off my info. So
You were doing almost the business.
I was literally doing exactly what I'm doing now. Yeah. It's just, it was for someone else. Yeah. So for me, like, that's kind of where the unhappiness stemmed when that finally like dawned on me. And I realized I had enough courage and confidence to go out and do my own thing.
Yeah.
So it felt good to put your 30 days.
It did. I was like so nervous. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I might vomit.
You know why? Because
now you can make more.
Yeah. I was in business for 10 years, and then I had to go back. I closed, and then I had to go back to a regular 9 to 5, and I had to put my 30 days after like 7 months of being there, and that was the best signature I ever. Like I literally drew my signature.
It looked so nice. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Like I'm out, So that's why I asked about the 30 days. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Like you get set free. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting because, I mean, I'd had thoughts about doing it, and then that was the moment where I'm like, okay, this is for sure happening, and now I have to, like, get it together.
Yeah.
What's the first step that you did once you said, okay, I'm putting in my notice, let's do this? What's the first step you did to start up this kind of business?
I mean,
Celebrate.
Yeah, right? Pop some champagne. I had some ideas of what space I was going to use, but that was the biggest one. I think the hardest thing about what I do is a lot of my patients will bring their children with them. So I was like, all right, I got to make sure like the people I rent with are okay with their sometimes being screaming babies. And, I had to make sure it was a space where like my patients felt comfortable because it's a very intimate thing that I do with patients. So I have to make sure they're very comfortable. I want to make sure the other people that I'm with understand what I do and are supportive of that. And that was like the first step was like, okay, now we got to find a space.
Do you need machines for what you do?
So I have an ultrasound machine, especially for like clogged milk ducts. I do use an ultrasound, technique for that.
You had that, or you just bought it?
It's en route right now. It's somewhere with the United States Postal Service. So hopefully it shows up. But the most expensive thing I have to get is the table. Those high-low tables cost like $3,000.
Really?
Wow.
So mine was delivered yesterday.
What table? What is
I am so excited for you. Like all this stuff is happening for you right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, we literally just pulled it out of someone's SUV yesterday, set it up today, and
it's exciting.
It was the first day having patients on there, and I'm like I'm very picky. Thank God it's Amazon Prime Day. So I got on the table, and since it's brand new, it's like stiff, and I'm like, ugh, I gotta get a mattress pad.
And it's Prime Day today.
Oh yeah, so I bought my mattress pad. I've got like a little table warmer. Like I've got everything just to make it as comfortable as possible. And
you already started seeing patients?
Yeah, so I had a soft opening last Friday. basically for patients who are like, I can't wait that long, or patients who are about to go north who wanted to see me. So I saw about 5 on Friday. And then I saw 8 on Monday. I was booked full on Monday. And that was so stressful because I didn't even know how to take payments. Like,
Do you see yourself getting like a receptionist or something very soon?
I would say I've thought about it already because like today, I mean, I had 2 faxes that came in. I had like a list of patients to call back, and I was like, oh my God, I don't even know if I'm gonna have time to do this. The only problem when you're thinking about hiring someone in that capacity is from a business mindset, you know that person's not really bringing in income. The patients aren't paying them to be seen.
Yeah.
So
But
you're
as
like,
long as if they're taking away things that aren't producing for
yes.
you, that meaning time consuming things that you can be focusing on other things.
You're
that
buying
make
time.
money, then you're buying time.
Yeah. So like on days like today where I was seeing patients and I was really busy and I couldn't call people, I was like, man, an office person would be really nice.
Yeah.
But then on days like Friday, I don't have any patients. Like
Well, they can do outreach.
yeah, those are the days where I'm like, do I need somebody? So because I'm in the beginning stages, it's really like, okay,
Yeah.
like I haven't even had a full week to see like what's
Yeah.
my
Yeah,
profit
literally.
margin here? Like, have I even paid off all the things I had to buy to get this started? So I haven't even had time to digest that and figure out like, where am I at business wise?
Right.
So far I haven't had, none of my patients have had a problem. I've been upfront every time they've come in and it's worked smoothly so far. But it's already been a thought in my mind for sure.
Yeah, and usually in business, every time that you when you open a new business, the first 2 weeks, everybody wants to know what you're doing, and you're busy. And then I always say that it goes like this when you open, and then it goes straight down, and then you have to start building.
Yeah.
So which is good to know, because then you can kind of prepare for okay, after the next 2 weeks, I'm going to start doing different marketing and things like that.
and then the thing with Florida is that Florida is very seasonal. So, you can kind of plan for what that's going to look like. So in Florida, September is typically one of the slowest months for therapy. So I already know that's coming. So I purposely kind of part of the reason I started now is because it is a slower month. And I'm like, this is a good time to ramp up. I'd rather not start this during season because that would be so chaotic. Hopefully things will slow down a bit and I can get to some of the other things I need to do before worrying about hiring someone.
Right.
Yeah.
The endometriosis is a disease process.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're treating it by getting to the root cause, which for most endo patients, they actually have a lot of dietary irritants. They have a lot of lifestyle factors that can improve it. Most people with endometriosis, they don't feel good. So they don't exercise, they don't sleep well, they don't eat well. And that usually makes it worse. So we educate patients on like how you actually treat it.
You're going to have to educate me.
Yeah, I was literally just going to say, what do we do for her?
How do we fix you?
Yeah, I need a lot of fixing.
So how does it feel that you don't have like a limit anymore working because you work for yourself now? So how does that feel?
I mean, that's been the best thing because when I was at another practice, there were so many things I wanted to do. I was like, I want to do virtual sessions for people like right after they have a baby because nobody wants to leave their house after they just had a baby like 2 days ago. But that's like when they need me the most. They're like, man, I didn't know how to get out of bed, So it's really exciting to not have any limits, to be able to just do whatever I want.
Right.
So that's been like one of the most exciting things about it.
Yeah. And
So you do virtual consults too?
I'll do virtual as well, especially for patients who live far away, who can't quite get to me, because with pelvic floor therapy, part of it is access. There's not very many of us. And, you may be in an area that doesn't have one for like an hour or two away. I've had patients drive an hour or two just to see me. So I do virtual as well. Some services work well that way, like pediatrics works really well. I don't do internal exams on kids. I don't do a lot of hands-on stuff with kids.
What is it exactly, the pediatric side? What does that entail?
So pediatrics, for example, like bedwetting. I've had kids bedwet all the way up to like 16. So bedwetting is a major problem. A lot of it has some underlying constipation issues. Some of that due to there being high tone in the pelvic floor muscles. So we really...
Wedding?
Yeah,
Wedding?
so like
Pee
kids
on their
who
bed.
pee like when they're sleeping at night. Yeah. Super common. You also have kids who like leak during nap time, or even like teenagers that leak during sleeping, napping.
So this is for people with not problems, but like issues with like their, how can I say this?
Pelvic floor muscles.
Yeah. So when I describe it to people, it's anybody who has a problem with bowel, bladder, and sexual function, because that's what the muscles do. They control all those functions. And when you think about that, it's like, wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What if somebody doesn't know they have a problem?
So that's part of like what we do as pelvic floor therapists is we try to educate people on, signs that are signs of dysfunction, because most people don't know. But then from a postpartum perspective, certain conditions can be asymptomatic. So for example, pelvic organ prolapse, a lot of times women can have that, but they don't know they have it because they don't have symptoms. And that's basically where the organs in the pelvic region start to fall through the vagina, which is super scary for a lot of women.
About that.
Yeah. And I'd say for a lot of women, they're like, oh my goodness, like that can happen. And for the most part, the early stages of it, you have no symptoms. You would never know.
How the heck does that happen?
So childbirth is the
One
most
day you just find it
common.
on the floor.
Yeah. Most
What
common
falls?
reason. It could be your bladder, your intestines, your uterus.
That's so scary that I could just start falling out of
But
you.
is that because of after having kids? Is that what?
Not necessarily. So I'm going to be like super vulnerable on this podcast. So I had a grade 1 bladder prolapse, and I've never had kids ever. But I played Division I softball, and in softball you lift a lot of heavy weights, and I was never told how important it was to breathe when you're lifting weights, and so I developed a prolapse from it. And I didn't find out until I was at my first pelvic floor course ever, and we were practicing, and someone was like, oh yeah, can you come confirm? I think she has a prolapse. And I'm like, the heck? I'm like, what? I was like, I have 5 out of 5 pelvic floor strength. What are you talking about?
What's prolapse? What is it?
So basically, I had a bladder prolapse, which is called a cystocele. And that's basically where the bladder isn't in its normal resting position. It starts to descend because gravity, of course, sends everything down. And because of all the breath holding I was doing while tightening my abdominal muscles, I was creating pressure in my abdomen, and it was pushing the organs down.
Oh my God, that's scary.
Like,
Yeah.
you never think that happens inside of you.
That
Yeah.
can't happen to. Can that happen to guys? No.
So men actually can have rectal prolapse. That's when the rectum prolapses out. And you guys usually end up with hemorrhoids and hernias. So that's.
I don't mean to laugh at all. 'cause
Yeah.
this is not funny.
So it all has to.
picturing
You
it.
told me.
Yeah. You're like,
I'm just
No, this
picturing
is
it.
so.
It looks
I'm
really-
like this because this is so new to me. Like
Yeah.
this is a new world. Yeah.
Yeah, so really it has to do a lot with pressure management. I mean, majority of the patients I work with, they don't understand that you shouldn't hold your breath when you're like doing
When you're lifting heavy
when you're
weights
lifting.
at the gym.
What
I
about when
mean-
you hold your pee?
So when you're
Does that
peeing,
also...
your pelvic floor is actually supposed to relax. So your pelvic floor
So
is
you're
supposed
making
to
it
lengthen.
stronger if you're holding it.
So people do Kegels usually
you get
while
a
they're
UTI.
peeing. Yes, you can
I mean,
end
it
up
helps
with
you one time.
yeah, you can end up with a UTI or urine retention because you're training your pelvic floor to tighten when you're peeing, and it's supposed to do the opposite. So that's something I educate my patients on because they just don't know. Like,
I'm going to say, why would you do Kegels while you're trying to pee?
because that's an easy way for you to tell if you're doing it right. So if you do it
Okay.
correctly, you will successfully stop the flow of urine. However, like
You don't want to do
you
it
don't
all
want
the
to
time.
do that all the time.
Confuse
Yeah.
your body.
So a lot of times people will Google it on the
So
internet,
confused.
and that's what they do.
This is interesting. So do you think that everybody that is every woman who gives birth after should see
Yeah.
somebody like you?
100%, yes.
Whether they think
Whether
they're
you
good
think
or
you
not.
have a problem
Just
or
to
not.
confirm.
Yeah, so actually in other countries, like in France, that's what they do. Like in France, you give birth to a baby, you get an automatic referral to pelvic therapy.
Oh, wow. Why don't we have that
I
here?
feel like that makes sense.
It does. It
lot.
makes total sense, but it's not what happens here. And a lot of times I don't see women until like they have symptoms. And by that point, like
Yeah.
things have really progressed in the wrong direction. And it's just harder to fix things when they're,
And
far.
how do you
That's
fix
a good
it?
marketing
Do you do
play right
therapy or because you say you have the ultrasound machine? What's the ultrasound machine for?
So ultrasound machine, it drives like heat deep in tissues. So I use it a lot for clogged milk ducts. That has been really helpful. There's also a condition called Peyronie's disease for the men, where you have a curvature in the penis. Sometimes after a penile fracture, and you actually,
what?
yeah. Have you heard of Peyronie's disease?
Peyronie?
Yes.
Peyronie's disease.
No,
Yeah, you guys are gonna go home and you're gonna Google all this stuff.
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
it's gonna be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it's a
You said fracture.
yeah. So you can fracture your
Cracked
penis. Like you can
a muscle?
because there's so many important tissues.
like this.
Yeah. So think about it.
Yeah.
Like, let's say that the penis is erect, like, because the penis changes depending on blood flow. The muscles themselves change. You know, the connective tissues change. What can happen? They'll call it a penile fracture, where basically when it is super erect, some kind of trauma happens that like bends it quickly, and you can actually damage the penis itself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that happen naturally or when you take the pill?
Wait,
It can happen with
Anyway.
both.
is that a good or a bad?
That's
It's bad. It's very painful. And what can happen is the tissues themselves can get stuck in that tightened position, in that bent position, and then it makes it very difficult for a man to be able to have intercourse. And
And
so,
how do you fix that?
so there's an ultrasound procedure that you can do along with soft tissue modalities. So like I do soft tissue work on the various muscles. I improve blood flow. Fascial work that you can actually do to help straighten out the penis so a man can have sex again, which I mean is huge.
just the more like in very easy understanding where it's just you're getting a massage.
Yes, if I were to put it like blankly, like yes, because what we have to realize is that everybody has a pelvic
No.
floor, right? And it's
What do you mean no?
This is gonna bring up so many questions. This is gonna bring up a lot of questions.
yeah.
This is good because I feel like a lot of people don't know.
Exactly.
Or plus, they're too embarrassed or
Like,
shy
maybe
to
you guys-
speak about it, so they have no idea where to go.
Yeah.
Anybody who's watching and goes to the gym, you better start breathing.
Yeah.
For real.
Yes. And when you're in like the competitive weightlifting world, like there is a proper way to create that intra-abdominal pressure because so for me, like I did have to hit 1 rep maxes all the time. When you're trying to hit a 1 rep max,
Heavyweight, right?
yeah, real heavy, like as heavy as you can lift it.
I can hear you breathing now.
I'm like,
Yeah. So, in order to
I'm
hit
good.
that, to lift super heavy weights, you do have to create that kind of pressure to hit
Yeah.
that. And so there is a right and a wrong way to do it.
Right.
I did it the wrong way. So now I know better.
well, I feel like when you're young and if you're doing it a certain way for so long, like lifting weights, and you have no idea that is even an option
A thing.
or a thing, they should have that at the gym.
Yeah, especially you think of all of these
Yeah.
people who are lifting heavy weights, but like they're still doing like 8-10 repetitions. It's not that heavy where you have
Right.
to be holding your breath. So I work a lot with patients on just teaching them proper breathing strategies for activities, lifting things off the ground. And especially when you think about like a woman who's just given birth, like those muscles are not ready for that.
Are the majority of your clients women or men?
Majority are women.
But you do have men.
I do see men, yes.
Do you have a crazy story because from the years that you've been doing this? That
Depends what you mean by like crazy, like
A professional crazy story.
as in
Maybe like a success.
Yeah,
just
type
one
of
of those stories
crazy
like,
story.
whoa.
Yeah, so crazy
Not
success.
that time, Jane.
Success? No, not success.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
what did you want her to tell about someone that came to her in like a really bad position, whatever it is, and then how she fixed them and like
Yeah.
how it benefits?
yeah, well,
One of those, but then also
a
another
crazy.
one.
So
He wants you to say something really bad, basically.
yeah, I mean, obviously, like on the really bad side, like when you work in an intimate space like this, you do open yourself up to
Creepy people.
Yes, exactly. Because
Yeah.
when you see a professional that is as open as I am, because it's what I treat. Like, for example, let's take a male, because obviously I tend to get more of that than women.
Let's keep it real.
Yeah, so this podcast is super real. So, for example, like I had a male that was seeing me for fecal incontinence. He just couldn't hold back his stools, and it obviously it impacts someone greatly. Like, it really impacts your life.
Wow.
He was really upset about it. Came to see me, and we kind of worked on strengthening the pelvic floor, but he had a lot of dietary issues. He had like a dairy intolerance he didn't know about that was upsetting his stomach and making his stool more loose. We had fixed that like pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And then he had read online that I also helped with erectile dysfunction. And, I kind of sat him down and said, yes, I do. However, there are a lot of factors that influence that. And I knew, based on his medical history, he had diabetes. And when you have poor blood sugar regulation, that's huge for erections. So I told him that it was very likely that I may not be able to 100% fix his problem. And that whole topic of erectile dysfunction led to some extremely, extremely inappropriate comments by the patient, where I actually had to fire him as a patient. So what I do when I have
After
someone
working with him for a little bit? Or?
Oh yeah, I had fixed his fecal incontinence by then, and then once that was over, he
was like making excuses to come see you.
I mean, really what happened, as soon as he started talking about erections, he started talking about his preferences in order to get an erection, which, I don't need to know that.
Right.
So, he started talking about oral sex, and I kind of stopped him and said, this is inappropriate and not relevant to your care. I'm going to step out of the office, and when I come back in, we're going to have an appropriate conversation.
Right.
And the second time he was in there, he had asked me if I enjoyed oral sex personally. And I said that I was going to have to fire him as a patient because I was his medical professional and it wasn't an appropriate comment. So that was the most uncomfortable scenario.
I'm assuming that's what's tough about what you do is
Yeah, but what does the patient, like, what's the experience like?
As far as,
you don't have to, show it, but so when someone comes in, what do you do?
Show.
I'm going to have you. You're going to get on the table for me.
The process. That's what I mean.
Process. Yeah. So we'll start with a female. So the process for a female is it's very similar to a gynecological visit. I don't start with my patient getting undressed. I sit down and I talk to them and I get to know them.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but by the way, I think this is super interesting because I had no idea that this existed and I'm
not gonna lie,
very
when you put the word most of the times holistic, that word.
And
I love why
you
I think about
something
that.
else.
It's alternative, right? It's an alternative, a better way to do without not medicine, but medication.
Really. I mean, medications are necessary sometimes, but a lot of times in traditional medicine, it's the first thing.
It's just here's the Band-Aid.
Yeah, especially for let's take pelvic floor, for example. When someone's leaking urine, you shouldn't put them on medication first because the research actually supports pelvic floor therapy first. But that just doesn't happen. And what I do is there's no side effects to it. I'm just teaching someone how to better understand their body and how to use their body. So when I see a female for the first time, I start, because I am holistic, I start getting to know them, getting to know their lifestyle, their diet, their, exercise habits. And then I kind of dive into an orthopedic assessment, like any other physical therapist. I want to see how your balance is, how you move, do you have tightness in your hips? What does your abdomen look like? And I start with all of that mostly because I want the first time my hands are on a patient to be on something that's comfortable to them, like their neck or, their hips, places they've been touched before by other healthcare providers. After that, I educate my patients with a model of where the pelvic floor is, so they understand that it is an internal muscular system.
Where is the pelvic floor?
So the pelvic floor muscles extend from your tailbone to your pubic bone. So they form like a hammock on the bottom of your pelvis. And then they were kind of covered by the hip muscles. So they are internal. For women, the most challenging thing is you can't really see anything. For men, if you're strong enough, you can't see a contraction happening. For women, you got to sit down, lay down, get a mirror. So it's really hard for us to know, do we know where those are? Do we know what's going on? So I always educate my patients where they are and why I have to do an internal assessment to really evaluate them. And by then they're like, oh yeah, I want to know like what's going on. And so I have them get undressed from the waist down. I don't use stirrups. I don't use a speculum like in the gynecological office.
Oh, I hate that stuff.
Yeah. And I just use a single glove finger, which for them, they're like, oh, thank God. I hate the speculum. I hate being put in stirrups, which is like the most like embarrassing position to be in.
What is that? Because I don't know.
When they make you put your
Like
feet
this.
up.
Yeah.
Like you're
you
about
see
to
in the
give birth.
movies.
And they go up like this.
Guys do that?
No.
Women.
But
Women.
for men for prostate exams, they usually have you bend over on a table. You're not old enough to really know that, but they usually
Wait, for men, they do what?
For men, they usually have you like, bend over a table and then they'll insert their finger rectally. But
They still do that, like
yeah.
because
What's that?
How
why
else
are
do
we
they
going
check?
to the moon and they still don't have a machine to do that?
Yeah, so
What's
that's how
that
the prostate assessment.
Make sure you don't have cancer
What's
or
that
lumps in your
for?
ass.
Yeah, and you know,
Sorry, your butt.
So the process is patient comes in, you talk to them first. You said
oh yeah, oh my gosh. Usually male patients, I don't.
I'm sorry.
they have to feel comfortable.
Crazy if you don't talk to them during that when you're gonna go get that done.
Yeah,
The
so
bend over the table thing.
yeah, and I don't even do that. You know,
Yeah.
I just understand from anatomy, like you're standing, you're holding your body weight up,
Yeah.
so you're not relaxed in any way, shape, or form. So I usually have my male patients inside lying or on their stomach with like a pillow underneath their stomach. They've got a sheet over them, you know, and not only that, but I usually don't even do an exam with a male until at least the second visit because I just feel like it takes so much more time to build up that relationship where they feel comfortable
gotta
just
break
because
the
I
ice.
am female,
yeah.
you know, so I understand that. I know it's uncomfortable.
So second visit, what happens in the second visit?
So for men, like I still work with them first. Like the beginning of the session, I'm working on other things like core strength, glute strength, you know, stretching their hips. Like I finish with the pelvic exam. So then like once they're done, they can get dressed and leave. They don't have to sit there and awkwardly have a conversation with me about golfing over the weekend or something, you know? And for most men, I do 100% try to get them better without ever having to do an exam. I try to palpate it externally if I can. I try to see it externally because with men, you can see it externally if they're strong enough.
Yeah.
I send them home with exercises to try to have them see if they can do it. Because I'd rather have you try it and, you know, get to know your body than
Right.
for me to do it.
So how does it go when, like, how do you measure the no, I can feel your face.
Wait, I got one.
No. This is a good question. How do you measure like okay, you're getting better, like you know how like what's
Yeah, so you obviously have like the objective measures, like testing the strength and testing the endurance and all of that. But really, you should see an improvement in your symptoms, right? So like if you were peeing every time you got out of your truck, like you should start noticing that like 50% of the time you're okay. Or you should notice that before you were leaking all day long.
oh, so this is about
like-
leaking.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm
Yeah.
talking about like
So
erection.
erections.
Yes.
Okay. So with erections, number one, it depends on what the problem is. Do they have pain with erections? Do they have just no erection at all? How you measure their progress is it easier for them to get an erection? Is there less pain? Can they sustain that erection for longer? Are
Can
they
foods help? Like, can
Yeah.
a diet help?
well,
with that?
because if you think about it, blood flow is super important.
Right.
So when we get into that holistic realm, diet is super important.
what are some things that like get blood flow going?
So
Like, foods.
foods. So, well, for example, like when you think about blood flow, blood sugar management is huge. That's
Right.
why you're trying to get people as far away from diabetes as
So
possible.
don't eat a lot of sugar.
Yeah, so you educate people about how diabetes impacts their erections. You educate people about how certain foods inflame the body. You know, inflammation in general causes problems.
Right.
And then you can dive into like, well, what foods help with, you know, blood flow more specifically? Like, for example, beets help elevate your nitric oxide levels, and nitric oxide is important for blood flow. So
beets.
yeah, like beets that you put in
Yeah.
salad. Not
Yeah,
like-
the purple one.
Yeah.
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 So
I'm gonna go to get a beet juice right after. Not because I have any problems, or
Yeah, yeah.
anything, but because
You know,
You
Yeah.
motivated him to be
Yeah.
healthy.
Prevention.
it's better. Yeah, prevention.
exactly. And that's what I tell people all the time. Like, if we're trying to prevent all these issues, like what I get down to the root is inflammation. Like, we all need to work on decreasing inflammation because inflammation leads to all sorts of problems
Yeah.
in the pelvic health realm, in the, mental health realm, all of it.
That's how diseases start, right? It's always inflammation.
Well, so if you think about it, like inflammation can happen anywhere in your body. So if you take a holistic approach to mental health, like your gut is your second brain. There are neurotransmitters produced in your gut. If your gut is super inflamed because you're eating things that you shouldn't, like, you're going to be more likely to have depression, anxiety,
Right. So if you're overweight, you are
more likely
inflamed.
So more likely to be depressed. Is that what you're saying?
And not have
Well,
an erection.
Well, so
In
when
general?
you get into it, when it comes down to like being overweight, like there are a lot of components to that. Like, how does that person feel about themselves? Like, obviously, if they don't like how they look, like that's going
Right.
to impact them mentally. But then also, if they have this inflammatory storm in their gut, they're probably going to be lacking some key neurotransmitters, which can also make them, more depressed, more anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how does it look for you? I know you only you just started. You opened doors on Monday, and how does that look like? Have you thought about the scale of your company? I know it's so early, but is that something that's ever crossed your mind?
Yeah. So I actually had a business call yesterday at the end of my day. And, of course, I always ask those questions. And, I'd like to be able to grow it. Obviously, I'm only one person. And, so, I mean, my main goal is I would like more physical therapists to kind of think the way that I think, to have that more holistic full body approach. I'm actually speaking at our Florida Physical Therapy Association conference kind of about that because, just like every profession, there's really good therapists and there's really bad ones.
Yeah.
And I think us as a profession, I think we can do a way better job of being more holistic, of actually taking the time to talk to someone about what they eat, what they
Right.
drink, if they exercise, if they sleep well.
And not just giving medication. Right
Yeah,
away.
not just saying, okay, like, go do those 15 exercises and then I'm going to use this ultrasound machine. It's not really going to do anything. There's no like research that backs this up. And then
Now that's interesting, but the reason why it's like that is because it's a huge business, right?
Well, so let's use a better
medical.
example, the electrical stimulation, right? Have you ever been to the PT and you've had like the TENS unit put on your shoulder and you're like, okay, it feels good. It just like buzzes.
I feel like that happened to me after a car accident. I was going to a chiropractor. They put something like that on my back.
Yeah. So
And it
one of the reasons that they do that, especially if it's an in-network clinic, is we can bill for that and we don't even have to be there. We just put it on you and we walk away. We can go treat another patient.
Yeah.
And you bill what? The insurance?
Yeah, so we bill your insurance for electrical stimulation.
crazy.
It's just an extra way to make money. So like those are the types of clinics I never wanted to be a part of because, we're not putting it on that patient because it's going to make a huge difference for them. We're putting it on because we can bill 50 more units of therapy time.
Right.
And,
How much does that equal?
well, so I don't use it for that reason. If I'm using electrical stimulation, I'm using it to stimulate specific muscles. I'm using it for pain modulation. I honestly don't use it a lot in my clinic. If I have someone who comes in and they have no idea how to contract their pelvic floor, I'll use it to stimulate the muscles. But it's not the same as when you get it put on your shoulder at the end of the session and then an ice pack and they walk away.
Oh, yeah.
Do you,
That's what
do you
they
know how much it is when people get that done?
It doesn't reimburse a lot, but I mean,
But
even
in-
if it's
but in
$15,
volume, yeah.
if you bill at $15 on every single patient you see,
Right.
I mean, it adds up.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be that kind of therapist, you
Right.
know?
Do you take insurance in your?
No. So I'm
Really?
not in network with insurances for that reason, because the biggest thing about physical therapy is insurance reimbursement rates drop every year. So let's take United Healthcare. I could see a United Healthcare patient for an hour. They're only going to pay me $50.
Wow.
That's it. So if you think of it from a business standpoint, I can't keep the doors open.
Right.
Only getting $50. And that's why so many PT clinics, they have to see like 2 or 3 of you guys at the same time just to keep the doors open. Because with how our profession's being reimbursed, we just don't make enough to see someone one-on-one.
Insurance is a crazy business, isn't it?
It is. And so what I tell my patients is, depending on your insurance, you may have out-of-network benefits. So what I do is I provide a super bill for, my patients with private insurances so that they can try and get reimbursed for their therapy sessions. But it allows me to treat patients based on what I think they need. If I think they need an entire hour of manual work, I can do it. Because at the end of the day, like, that patient's paying me for what I think they need.
Right.
I'm not being dictated by the insurance companies and trying to do what bills the highest.
Right. I like this approach. Oh, sorry. I like this approach though, right? To medicine. Don't you guys like that?
Yeah. And that's my question, that have you had any customers that, because like me, not customers, clients, me, I believe in medicine. Like, I don't tolerate pain. I believe in medicine. The way that, like, I have a headache, okay, I'm taking my pill because I can't deal with my migraine or endometriosis.
got you.
It's very painful.
Yeah.
So have you had clients or patients that are very focused on medicine and then you have to just change their way of thinking to be more holistic now?
Well, so most of the patients do see me specifically because my business name is Holistic, and they just tend to be that way.
know.
But like, sometimes people just don't know, like when you have someone and you hear that they're getting headaches all the time, you're like, have you ever thought about what's causing that? Like,
Let's talk to Joey.
always...
Let's talk to Joey directly.
Yeah, no, for real. Because Joey's a
'Cause
perfect
Joey-
example. She has
endometriosis.
Thank you.
So endometriosis is a really tough one.
But sometimes you'll get headaches too.
She gets headaches a lot.
Yeah, because endometriosis is a disease process. And in my opinion, it's one of the conditions that I think is most medically mismanaged. So for most people, they're told they need to be put on birth control and that's it. Like, that's all they can do for you. And then you just suffer until like your period stops, and it's awful. And not only that, but a lot of endometriosis patients end up with infertility down the road because they've been on birth control for 10 plus years, which has taken away their period.
And it messes them up.
Yeah, and
it kills them.
Yeah, and it's very important for us to have a menstrual cycle.
Well, that's what happened to me because I took birth control for over 10 years.
Oh, me too.
And then when we wanted to have kids, it took us forever to have kids. And then that's when they told me, okay, you have endometriosis, you need surgery.
Well, they didn't even know that she had endometriosis. So I think you need to have surgery.
So they can confirm. That's what
So it has to be confirmed laparoscopically.
Yes.
So when we're talking about something like endometriosis, that really does benefit from a multidisciplinary approach. Majority of those patients need counseling on nutrition and, what they eat and drink. A lot of patients are extremely sensitive to certain foods and drinks that will make them have more symptoms, whether that's pelvic symptoms, bowel bladder symptoms, or pain in general.
That's what
I feel like,
That's why you gotta do the gene test.
She eats really clean and strict, but then sometimes she splurges, but like, she'll notice.
feel
you feel terrible.
Awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what did I eat? What
You gotta
is
take
it?
the
This
gene
is it
test.
that? But then I eat something else, and then I'm like,
There's
okay,
a good gene test out.
Yeah.
how do you figure out what?
So
what
for
it is?
example, like I did genomic testing. Mine was like thousands of dollars.
This one's 500.
Yeah. So like, for example, I have my boyfriend taking a genetic test. I think it was $250.
Really?
And so you send in your sample and it tells you like how you should eat, how you should exercise based off of your genes. And it's, it's only $250. So he's starting with that. I did a full blown one, like thousands of dollars. I learned everything and anything I wanted to know about my body. But it's really interesting because I was on birth control for 10 plus years. Before I moved down here, my appendix was removed. My gallbladder was removed.
Oh my God.
Like I still had pain and I'm like, what is going on? And I took a genetic test and I have, genes that make me very sensitive to gluten.
Oh, wow.
And I had been tested by traditional doctors, but they only tested me for celiac disease. And celiac disease is like an allergy. I was just sensitive to it. So I have what's called non-celiac gluten intolerance. So every time I eat gluten, it like inflames the heck out of my system. And
I have to get that test
Like
done.
pizza,
Yeah, you
pasta.
do.
yeah, so like the test that like I'm having him take is, you know, $250, you know, and he'll find out like how his body responds to certain things. If you want my honest opinion about gluten though, is I don't think anyone should really be having it. I mean, it inflames everybody, especially here in the United States with how we produce it. There's a reason that people go to Italy and they eat all the bread and all the wine they want and they feel okay, but then here they don't.
People eat too much.
Why don't they include
People eat too much in the U.S.
Why don't they include a genes test? You know, when you're born, like in the package, you know, that way you know.
Well,
I mean, we know why. We know why.
I mean, there's
Package. There's a package when you have a baby.
yeah, and they're not only that, but they're, you know, there's
They don't want you
controversy.
healthy. They don't want you healthy.
Bro,
not-
they solve your problems. They don't make money.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic.
No,
Yeah.
When you get
One
into
time I was
that.
gonna go. I went to a is dermatology for face?
Skin.
Yeah,
Yes.
skin. Okay, so I went to a dermatologist, and they were gonna put me on Accutane.
I was on that. I had a seizure and almost drowned.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was in.
my
I was
God.
20. Yeah,
Nobody
let's do
take
another-
Accutane.
Yeah. I was working at a pool as a lifeguard,
Because
and
of that?
Well, what else?
Well,
I guess, right? That's
so
what
yeah,
you're
so
taking.
that was the only thing. I went to the neurologist. They're like, "Oh, you probably it's just from alcohol use and you don't sleep." And I'm like, "No, I am a Division I athlete. I don't drink. I sleep like 9 hours a night." And so I was on Accutane. And so I asked him, I said, "Could it be from the Accutane?" He's like, "Well, some people have reported that, so I would get off of it immediately."
Wow.
Like I literally almost lost my life because of acne, and
Crazy.
all the doctors did was put me on birth control and Accutane.
And just so you know, your skin's beautiful.
You would have never thought.
What were you gonna say about Accutane?
Yeah, sorry.
You don't
I
want to
hope you
say it
didn't take
anymore.
it.
So my story isn't as
Dramatic.
But what they told me, what the lady said, the dermatologist, was that they were going to take Accutane off of the market because it worked. Because it was something that would like actually get rid of your acne.
I mean, you essentially like peel off your whole face.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's intense, but
It is.
But when she told, and I was really young when she told me that, I just thought to myself like, why would they take it off if it helps or if it works for some people? But then it just makes sense because then they can't keep, you know,
Bailing you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so some more natural things that they've talked about, like removing from public uses, like, you know, things like bioidentical hormones and NMN, which is the precursor to NAD, which is, if you've taken
NAD?
biology class, like NAD is important for the Krebs cycle, which helps produce ATP, which is energy. You know,
What about
there's
for kids?
Huh?
What about for kids that start with that you might know that they might have acne?
So what I always tell people is a lot of times your skin health is very reflective of your digestive health. So
Like
a
what
lot
you
of
eat?
Everything is.
I mean,
what
like
we
now when I think back to it, I was like, man, you know, if I would have just probably stopped eating gluten, I probably would have cleared my skin up. But like, I didn't know that until I went to a functional medicine doctor here in Naples. And I mean, he treated me in 3 sessions. He said, cut out gluten, cut out dairy, did some like gut repair protocol, and then I was fine.
Because of the
You were like a new
gene
person?
test? Or no?
I took the gene test just because I'm like super curious.
With
but
him, with that guy.
Yes, with him. And that's when everything was like confirmed. Like it was confirmed that I didn't tolerate gluten. You know, it was confirmed that like I had a hard time detoxing my body and getting, you know, harmful things out. So
you recommend it?
I'm a big fan of people getting to know their genetics and their genes.
I'm gonna do it.
Isn't that? I mean, isn't that the first
10X.
thing you should do?
10X.
Like get a gene test so that you know. I mean, where the problem is coming from.
I mean, the biggest thing though is like if a lot of people just eliminated gluten and like tried to minimize dairy, I think a lot of people would get better, honestly.
What do you think about the carnivore diet?
I think for some people it can help. For some people it doesn't. I mean, think about like when you're having a carnivore diet, a lot of those people like they're not having gluten. So you don't know, is it from all of the meat or is it from, you know, not eating gluten?
Yeah.
Me personally, I wouldn't do well on it. I mean, I know based off my genetics, I do best with a Mediterranean style diet. I think majority
What is that?
Mediterranean is kind of like a lot of healthy oils like olive oil, fish, nuts, whole grains, you know. And I think a lot of people really benefit from that lifestyle. So I'm Japanese, so I eat more of like a Mediterranean way.
What?
Yeah,
I did not see that coming.
Where from?
Okinawa is where my family's from.
Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you
Top
speak?
and-
I can speak a little bit, not a lot. Yeah, I'm not gonna butcher this.
Wait.
That was the
You're like
next thing.
half Japanese, or
I'm
both are the
26% Japanese and then 25% Swedish. So they kind of like
25. 26.
about-
What about the other 40?
it's just a whole bunch of other stuff.
Oh, really?
You know, yeah, like 1%
That's like the majority.
here. But yeah, my majority is Swedish and Japanese. So
That is
like,
so cool.
you know, I tend to eat like a Mediterranean kind of way, and you know, based on where I'm from, it kind of makes sense. You know, we eat a lot of fish.
Do
We
you
don't-
eat rice?
Yes.
Yes, you do?
But the interesting thing is like everybody responds differently to different foods. So I'm such a nerd, I'm realizing. So like I bought a continuous glucose monitor and I wore it, and you know, I tried it with a friend and we would compare like how our body would respond to different foods.
Mm-hmm.
And his spiked like crazy when he had rice. Mine didn't at all. But like, you know,
Glucose is sugar levels, right?
yeah. And so it was interesting to see that just because we were from two completely different parts of the world, like how we responded differently, you know, based off of our genetics to the same exact food.
Oh my god,
prepared
where
the
did you
same-
get this monitor? I wanna try
I think I just went to CVS and just bought it.
I'm gonna look for it.
Do you do,
Yeah.
do you do intermittent fasting?
No, I personally do not. The research for women in their reproductive years isn't great for
Wow.
intermittent fasting.
In the reproductive years?
Yeah.
So if you want to have kids,
Yeah, so we're just so
Don't fast.
complicated because we have a menstrual cycle. So our hormones are constantly fluctuating.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of women, you know, intermittent fasting can be harmful for their hormones. So
so
what is-
basically everything I'm doing is bad.
for some people it can,
Pretty much.
some people it can be good.
But you're not having kids
You're
anymore.
not having kids anymore, though.
No, but it messes up your hormones.
Yeah, but you still have a cycle. So for some conditions,
Oh, yeah.
it can be
Stop doing that.
beneficial. But
Stop
for
doing
some
that.
people, it just doesn't work. So for me, I do better with more of like a cycle syncing kind of method. So depending on where I'm at in my cycle is like how I eat, how I exercise. So
Yeah.
for example, like when you're menstruating, your body's going through a lot as a woman. You know, that's when I do more of my restorative exercise, my yoga, my meditation. And, you know, I'm really focusing on like getting really good nutritious foods because I need it.
Right.
For me, it's the other way.
what
For
is
me,
your
it's when that happens, like I'm craving more things that I know I'm not supposed to be eating.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like when you're craving foods, it's a sign that you're like really, your body is really wanting certain micronutrients. You know I really need iron. Like when it's that time of the month, I really need iron. And so like
steak?
That's me. I eat a lot of steak.
that is
What-
like
what
the
is-
one
what is
time
your-
I have red meat.
What is your diet look like?
I eat a
start to finish.
ton of fish.
So take us through your day.
So, gosh, okay.
Your food day.
Yeah, so like for breakfast, like I'm a really big fan of eggs and avocado. Like my favorite breakfast would be like a sweet potato. I slice it into a really thin piece. I turn that into like my bread, and then I'll put, you know, an over easy egg, avocado on it, a little bit of everything, bagel
Toast.
Oh,
seasoning.
that sounds pretty good.
That
That
does
does
sound
sound
good.
good.
I just put it in the oven or my air fryer. I love my air fryer. Make it nice and crisp. And then you've got, you know, your sweet potato, vitamin A. You've got healthy fats. You know, your
Protein.
No
Yeah.
toast, you said, right?
I put the sweet potato in the air fryer. That is my toast.
Oh, that is
because I don't do gluten.
bread, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's usually how I'll start my day because I've got my healthy fats, I've got my protein. I also have collagen with green tea every morning, and that's usually my morning on a day where like I have time to eat it. Which now that I run my own business, I've got more time. And then, you know, for lunch, I'm either having leftovers of what I've made before, and I am that weirdo that will have leftover fish, you know, leftover. Even if it's
take it to work.
So what does your lunch look like?
yeah, so like today I had turkey chili, leftover turkey chili, that I put like even lentils and stuff in just because, you know, I wanted a little bit of extra things in there. And I mix it up, like just based off of what I need at that point in time.
So turkey and lentils.
Yeah, turkey, lentils,
And
you
rice.
know, garbanzo beans, and yeah, sweet potato, you know,
Sweet potato.
peppers, onion.
Is that your main source of carbs, sweet potato, or do you also
No.
put some rice?
I mean,
in
I
it?
try to get it from vegetables. Like tonight, I'm having ratatouille. So squash, zucchini, eggplant, tomato. So you
with what?
know, chicken. So I'm gonna do chicken breast with that. But yeah, like I try to focus on things that are naturally gluten-free. Like I try to stay away from like the gluten-free pre-made meals, the gluten-free breads,
I want to ask everybody now how their day looks
Walk
like
me through a day in your life.
with their meals, because it's super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, salmon's one of my favorite things. I have salmon
same.
all the time. So usually I'll buy like an entire salmon and I'll make half of it for dinner, and then I'll take the rest of it and I'll kind of marinate it for the next day, and I'll do like a cute little like salmon bowl with like, edamame and carrots and sauteed spinach. And
You love to cook. I think.
I like it. I like it because you can experiment it, experiment with it and do what you want.
Yeah.
I want everyone to cook, because then you're in control of what oils you use and what cooking products. Like, for example, with endometriosis, I try to get people away from like plastic Tupperware and, anything that's got like any harmful plastics in it. I try to get people towards like cast iron and not cooking with things that have harmful things that can upset your hormones.
What about oils?
So I'm olive oil. I could drink olive oil.
Olive oil?
I love olive oil. Yeah. So I stay away from
You
vegetable
gotta stop
oil.
ordering that canola oil or whatever.
Yeah, canola oil I don't use. I don't use vegetable oil. I
your
use
mom
olive
already
oil.
told me to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She buys the avocado oil.
avocado.
Yeah,
Is
so
that is that better than olive?
I personally, I'm an olive oil fan, organic cold pressed olive oil. Like that,
me too.
especially when
I
you're
love
thinking
olive
about
oil.
Mediterranean diet, like olive oil is a huge staple in that diet.
Yeah.
And it is anti-inflammatory.
True.
So like for me, I'm like, all right, like I will drizzle that all over. I don't even use salad dressing. I just use olive oil and avocado.
So good.
Is Lebanese fall under Mediterranean?
See, Lebanese I'm not super familiar with, but yes, they usually do have more Mediterranean style cuisine. There's a really good Lebanese restaurant around here that
Yes.
I've been trying to
Koreans.
give it a
If you've never been, go.
Yeah, I have not. Is that the one over by 21 Spices?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, yeah, that's
It's
the
the
one.
same owner, right?
Yeah, same owner.
Yeah, I've been.
So good.
I went. I think it was for my
The chicken?
birthday to 21 Spices, and I saw it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that looks
No, it's
good
so
too.
good.
It's so
It's
good.
so good.
But yeah,
I
that
got
I
an
mean,
debone chicken.
We gotta try it.
It's
We've been telling you to go.
I know,
I
but
think
now,
we're gonna go
now that
too.
I need to change my
it
diet
is
completely.
really good.
You do.
But they
I'm
use
gonna
a
be
lot
a
of
new
oil.
person.
Like they'll have like yogurt with
I don't know where to
oil.
start.
yeah. And
I know you said you're not big on dairy, but like some of the stuff.
So it's really common in Asian cultures to not tolerate dairy. But like, I mean, based on my genetics, it says that I tolerate it. But like, I've just learned personally, I don't.
Are eggs dairy? Eggs are dairy, right?
Well, so eggs is an animal protein.
Yes, yes.
So-
I thought eggs was considered dairy.
Yeah, same.
It's
Or like it, I
if
guess.
it grows up, it's gonna be a
Debatable.
chicken.
dairy. How is
True.
it dairy?
So
I don't know. At least I
But
feel like always
I
see those
remember
little
seeing it in the
pyramids.
pyramid.
See?
yeah, I mean
When you were a kid, yeah.
different though, because like
But did you see an egg or did you see a chicken in the
which
It was
compares
an
an
egg.
egg. So there's a lot of people that don't tolerate dairy, but they tolerate eggs just fine. So like I'm one of them. I eat tons of eggs. But like I don't really go near dairy much. I might have some cheese, but I haven't had cow's milk and
Yeah, I don't
Forever.
drink milk either.
yeah.
But I like cheese, eggs.
Yeah, and like there's certain cheeses that are a little easier. Like
Yeah.
feta cheese is kind of my go-to. And there's some cheeses that are a little more heavy.
Goat cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, grilled cheese that would be a little heavy for me. But yeah, so you really have to figure out like what your body tolerates. Like back to the DNA. Like based on my DNA, I actually do okay with dairy. But like I just know based on how I feel, I don't. Like nobody wants to be around me when I've had dairy. So I personally just don't have a lot of it.
Right.
So you can be guided by DNA, or you have those people who like need that
Yeah.
to convince them to make changes. But
No,
like
you can feel it. Like when you eat something, you shouldn't feel bad when
you shouldn't.
when
You shouldn't
eat
be
something.
bloated. You shouldn't, be gassy. You shouldn't have
Yeah.
diarrhea. You should feel good. You should
Yeah.
feel energized. And sometimes you've got this big inflammatory storm going on where like it doesn't matter what you eat, like you just never feel good. And that's when like eliminating a lot of the inflammatory foods for some time can be
Yeah.
helpful.
I had a friend that would wake up and really early, like 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, go to the kitchen, open the fridge, and drink a Coca-Cola. First thing.
Oh.
I was like, dang, that's crazy. Drink water, man.
Yeah. So like my routine, as soon as I wake up, I always have a glass of room temperature water on my bedside table. Like first thing in my body is always room temperature water.
I now that you say that, I craved,
Who else would do
with my second pregnancy, I craved Pepsi.
Pepsi?
As soon as I wake up, I'm like,
Really?
I need my Pepsi.
And what, would you drink it?
Yeah.
In the morning?
Yeah.
But she also got
And
fat.
a donut.
crazy, though.
And a donut. I would go to Dunkin' Donuts every day
With a
and
dry,
buy
right?
2 glazed
That's
donuts.
because
I knew I was doing
You think,
something bad.
but sugar is addictive. Like sugar.
yeah, but with
has that,
pregnancy is like
Cheese
you can't
can be the
control
same
yourself.
way. Like you can have like opioid withdrawal, like with cheese. Like if you
No,
eat
you
enough
were
of it.
addicted.
What?
Yeah,
You were addicted
but when
to-
you're
to
pregnant,
sugar.
it's something that you can't control. Like
And a lot of
I
times,
don't know,
like
you haven't had kids, but
It's
yeah,
funny
you don't
because-
understand.
you don't understand that.
But
But
yeah,
yeah, I was addicted to Pepsi and 2 glazed donuts.
yeah, and with pregnancy, like the nutritional demands on the body is insane. And for a lot of people, they're just not quite meeting it. And for a lot of people, they have a smoother, better pregnancy when they are meeting their nutritional demands. And that's why, like, I'm a big fan of people working with a nutritionist dietitian during pregnancy, because a lot of us, like, I mean, I swear if I told people how much like protein they should have and like how much fat they should have, like they'd be
Shouldn't
like,
you have 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight?
well, so it's not that like clear cut for everyone, right? So for a lot of people who are trying to build muscle and like really gain muscle, like that is usually what they will recommend. But you have to realize for some people that just would be too much on their body, you know, that if they have like kidney dysfunction or, you know, sometimes that's too much. So really what I do with patients is I like to just see where they're at.
Yeah.
Like if you've got someone who's having like 20 grams of protein a day and you say, oh, I need you to have 1 gram of protein per pound of fat.
20 grams
per
of
pound.
protein a day?
Yeah, like,
What are they eating?
well, I mean, there's a lot of people that I meet that just like
Yeah, but that's
don't
crazy.
have protein,
Yeah,
you know, and it's like, ooh, no wonder you don't feel very good.
right.
You know, there's a lot of people who like are
Because you
trying
could
to
get it
lose
in pretty
weight.
easy.
I mean, it depends on how much you're talking, right?
Well, no. I mean, like.
20 grams is a lot.
28.
No. I mean, like.
Not everybody eats a lot.
No, but you don't have to eat a lot.
I don't think I.
But not everybody just has like chicken all the time and stuff like that, you know? Like most
Yeah.
people might eat a lot of fish, that's why they don't get it. Like they just might have different like preferences.
Salmon is really rich
Yeah.
in protein.
Yeah, fish is a good source of protein. But then you think about like the vegan vegetarian, you know, population, like you have to really think about what are all those other sources of protein that you have to have, you know?
Right.
And it is a little harder. Can it be done? Yeah, it can. It's just you have to try a little bit harder.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
what are your thoughts about like vegan and vegetarian diets?
I personally was vegetarian.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. I could
But
not.
do you think it's sustainable?
For me, it wasn't. But I mean, for some people, like who really really like plan
not
it
to cut you
out.
off, Bree, but
Yeah.
what's going on? 'Cause what happened?
No.
Okay.
I remember something.
But you know, for some people, like they do a very, very good job. Like it can be done. It's kind of like keto diet. It can be done well, and it can be done very not well. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see those people who are like making like a fried donut sandwich, and they're like, oh, well,
Oh, wow.
you know, I made a keto donut, and this is okay. But like, there's a good way to do it, and there's a bad way to do it. For me, as a student athlete, when I was a vegetarian, I was struggling to get enough protein.
Yeah.
I actually passed out during one of my workouts, and I was like, "Boo, this isn't for me."
Yeah.
So
I just feel like there's so many. It's crazy because it's like things work different for everybody.
yeah,
It's almost
exactly.
just like,
Maybe
just
that's why it's
do
so
it.
important to do that gene
No,
test.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, so for me, like based off my genes, I do know that like how I feel and what I eat is supported by it, which makes me feel good. But yeah, everyone is a little bit different. And that's why like the whole idea behind holistic integrative medicine is to make it individualized.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Because like salmon's really good for you, but not everybody likes salmon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does you say you have a boyfriend or
Yeah,
husband?
boyfriend.
Does he get mad at what you do sometimes?
No,
or-
you know, that's a really
Does he
good.
get
Now when we
uncomfortable?
change it, you know, because
Yeah,
it's looking a little bit like the Food Network.
Well, so it's funny that you mentioned that. So we met online actually, and you know, online it just says I'm a physical therapist. It doesn't
Yeah.
say like what kind of physical therapist.
Yeah.
So like when we first met, he knew I was a PT, and you know, knew I was really health conscious and into nutrition, and that's kind of what we connected on. I'm trying to remember how I found out I was a pelvic PT. I think I was yelling at him about his bladder because he peed way too much. And he was like, what? I just have a small bladder. And I'm like, no, that is a myth. Like,
Or what if he drinks a lot of water?
That is a myth.
well, so, he was under the impression that he literally had a small bladder. And I'm like, no, like everybody has the same size bladder, but yours is functionally small because you've gotten in the habit of peeing when you don't really have to go. And now you have to go every 30 minutes. And that was just another education piece where he's like, what? And I mean, I think he was fixed in like 2 days, like just once he knew that.
What do you do?
So what we did was
He
we did like
held it.
bladder training. I said, you don't have to go. You just went.
So just what?
hold
Hold
it.
it?
And then when you're in that normal voiding schedule, then you can go. And it was an easy fix. But then he's like, well, how did you know that? And I'm like, oh, well, I do this.
I do that for a living.
Yeah, I do that for a living. But he gets super excited about like, I mean, he's constantly learning how many people I help. And when you're talking about someone who has pelvic floor dysfunction, I mean, it is a way bigger deal to help somebody get back to like having intercourse without pain than to help someone who like couldn't reach like 10 extra degrees into their cabinet,
Right.
Like when you've got someone who hasn't been able to have sex with their husband for 4 years because it's been painful, like that is way more rewarding to get someone back to than like,
Oh yeah.
you can hit the golf ball 5 yards further.
Right.
So that's why I love what I do. And I think he kind of sees that passion and he's like, wow, like, because he's met my patients in public. I ran into one of them on our flight back from a family reunion. And, he was like, who's that? And I was like, oh, remember she said she was my patient. And, oh, wow. And,
Yeah.
and it's just great for him to run into my patients who are so open now. Oh my God, she helped me. I was having this problem where I like couldn't hold my bladder, and it's amazing how open people are about.
Does he get uncomfortable when you come home and you have like a male story? Like today, I had to touch a penis. I had to fix a penis.
No, because
Does he get uncomfortable about
he
that?
doesn't. I think he thinks more in terms of like, oh my God, I'm glad that's not me that needs that,
Right.
because there is no like sexual component to it, like when I'm working with someone, I just want them better. And
Like the gynos too. Like
like
gynecologists.
I try to respect their privacy as much as possible. I drape as much as possible. I don't handle what I don't need to handle. If I need them to move something out of the way, they do it. I don't do it.
Right.
But like I try to handle that as delicately as possible, because it is a difficult thing for a man to be able to come in and do. But no, he doesn't think anything. He doesn't get like jealous.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like it's work.
Yeah, it is. And I will say,
But are gynecologists are most of them male or female? Do you
Both.
know?
I feel like there's a lot of men because
This
anytime
is an
I've
interesting-
gone, I've always gotten
A lot of
more-
men?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've gotten men
Hers
more
was
than
a
women.
Mine's a man.
The
Yeah.
last time
What
it was
your
a
thoughts
gay
on that,
man,
Brie?
but
Do you think that's? I don't know. Is that weird?
well,
Is
so
that
like for
not
me,
weird?
I don't care. I don't care if I have a male or a female. Like for me, I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
But
I would
do you
say
think in general? Do you think that's weird or no?
I don't, because like I work on men. So for me, like I don't think it's weird. It's just they're doing their job. So for me, I don't care if a man works on me. I don't care if a female works on me. I would say down here, I feel like some of the older doctors are male. Like I haven't really met any new young male doctors down here that are OBGYNs, but I have met, there's a lot of new young women down here. There's a lot of practices that are only women. I will say that I don't get a lot of referrals from male OBGYNs for pelvic floor therapy. I honestly don't know if I can say I've had one.
Why is that?
because they just don't know.
I don't know if it's
Maybe
like they
like-
don't know that I exist or they don't know how important it is. But, obviously like men can know. My top referring provider is a male, and it's because I've sat down with him and educated him on what I do. And he's like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, and he sends all sorts of people.
Yeah.
But the hardest part is getting in front of these doctors and saying, this is what I do. This is what I help. I promise you, your patient will thank you, because they will leave this appointment knowing so much more about their body that they didn't know. And it's empowering to know more about your body.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have no idea that this even exists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did.
What is a gynecologist?
Yeah, I had no idea.
Like, what is the like a gynecologist's job?
Well, so they special in the gynecological system in the reproductive organs. So, their job is to ensure reproductive health, whether that's cancer screening, whether that's making sure that, you are not having pain, like whether it's your reproductive organs or it's during intercourse, whether it's for birth control methods, making sure that you're able to deliver a baby safely. They specialize in the reproductive system. So anything that has to do with reproduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll find out.
Yeah.
I'm asking for the public.
Yeah.
You're asking for a friend.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is like, not everybody knows like what exactly they do. Like a lot of people stop going to the OBGYN after they're done having children, but like there's still gynecological cancers that you can still get even if you say, oh, I'm done. I don't want any more kids, know?
Right.
So, I mean, back to like forever ago on this podcast, like crazy story, patient success story. I was working with a woman who had interstitial cystitis, which is a painful bladder condition. And I worked with her for a few sessions and it was pretty much resolved. So I was like, hey, what else you got? Like, and so she had fibromyalgia. And so, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I really kind of want to get some information, some blood work from you. And I wrote on a Post-it note certain, tests that I wanted to see for her. And one of them was cortisol, which is your stress hormone.
Yep.
So she went and got her labs done. She sent them to me and I was looking at it and I was like, ooh, like this is not normal. Yeah. And her cortisol level was so high and her, estrogen levels were fine. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like I've never seen this before. Like, and so I asked if she was getting follow-up, if she's going to get like an MRI or something. And they did. And they actually found a mass in her colon while they were looking at her adrenals. And so she came back to me and she's like, hey, I have this mass, because I did the follow-up you told me to do. And I was like, oh my God.
What's a mass?
So she didn't know what it was. And so I said, okay, do you have someone following up with that? Because a mass in the colon, like colon cancer is no joke.
Oh, that's colon cancer.
Well, so that's what we had to see.
That's what it could lead to.
Yeah, exactly. So she had a colonoscopy. They could not remove it. And they basically sat her down and said, I don't know how you found this, but it's not cancerous yet. We're going to have to remove part of the colon to get it out. And because we found it before she had any noticeable symptoms, it was not cancer, thank God.
Wow. Awesome.
Because like she had nothing. She had no pain in that area. She hadn't known no issues with her bowels. Mm-hmm. We just found it because I told her to look at her stress hormones, and that was it.
I wonder what my cortisol levels are.
I mean, mine were so high.
Really? I heard if you think that you like your cortisol to be high, it's okay.
What?
Like it's just like a mind thing.
It's a mindset.
What do you think about that? Like if you're always like, oh man, damn, I'm stressed. Or if you're like, yeah, I'm stressed. I love being stressed.
So I was one of those people that didn't think I was stressed. So I sat down with my functional medicine doctor, and of course he had my blood work in his hands and he's looking at it and he's like, do you feel stressed? And I was like, no, not at all. And he's like, okay, I'm going to need you to like meditate. And I was like, okay, now that stresses me out because like now I got to carve time for that. And like that makes me really nervous and really anxious. And he's like, okay, I'm looking at your cortisol levels and they're really high. Okay, your cortisol level is high. What's the bad? Why is that bad? Or is that bad? Well, so man, we're like branching off into all sorts of topics. So cortisol is one of your steroid hormones. And so your steroid hormone pathway, it interconnects a lot of your other hormones, like your sex hormones. So like to get even more vulnerable and personable, when I was seeing this doctor, I was having like issues with painful intercourse. I was having issues with like low libido. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having like hot flashes and I'm like 24. What's going on? And so that was one of the markers that he tested. So basically my stress level hormones were so high that it was stealing away from the precursors that I needed to make my estrogens, my progesterones. So for me, like, I needed to manage my stress levels if my sex hormones were going to be okay. And I treated it completely naturally. I took ashwagandha, a supplement that helps lower your cortisol levels, and I meditated and I tried to exercise more. And it came down, I think it came down from it was like 46. And I think it came down to like 10.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
So after that, I just realized how stressed I really was. I just didn't know it
Wow.
because I didn't
Sometimes you don't
feel
know
it.
Sometimes you just think it's normal.
Yeah, I
feel
didn't
like that.
feel stressed at all. But then like once I brought that down, I was like, wow, like
Yeah.
I feel so much more energized and I feel like I sleep better. So it was just crazy to me.
Wow.
We
And
learned
Bree-
a lot.
Yeah. Bree,
It's
what
been great.
is there anything that you, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
that would like to say? Maybe advice or something new that's happening in your company, or just anything in general that you would like to leave off on?
I mean, the biggest thing that I try to tell everybody is everybody has a pelvic floor, even men. So everybody can benefit from pelvic floor therapy and learning more about it. You know, with my company, I'm super thankful that I do not only pelvic floor therapy, but physical therapy, medical massage, manual lymphatic drainage massage. And then I also have kind of started educating people on like their genetics and, you know, where they can get like a really affordable test to kind of learn more about that. And then
I need that information.
yeah. And then I work with patients and I try to really like provide them with like, hey, like let's make a little sample workout program and, you know, let's try to make some of these changes and let's see how you do.
Right.
So it's something super exciting where I can do like all these different things. But yeah, I'm super excited to help people virtually and in person, and really just improve the awareness of pelvic health. Cause as you guys found out shortly when you learned what I did for a living, like it's just not an area that people know much about.
Right.
No.
So I think a lot of people leave talks with me and they go home and they like Google a lot. So it's just like the more people that know about it, the more they can educate other people, whether they have like siblings or children or, you know, anyone, and say, oh, hey, did you know that's actually not normal? Like you can get pelvic floor therapy and they can fix that.
Right.
You know, and that's the coolest thing is getting people from all over the place. You're like, oh, so-and-so told me that this wasn't normal. And I'm like, oh, thank you, so-and-so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that we're shining light on what you do on this podcast. So hopefully people become aware. Especially here in the Southwest Florida area, and come to you for any questions that they
Oh yeah, and I'm like one of the most selfless people. I don't even care if you come see me. I just want you to see someone. Like even if you're over in like Georgia and you hear this and you're like, oh, pelvic floor therapy exists.
Right.
Like you can message me and I will connect you with whoever is around you in the United States.
Awesome.
You know, so I just want someone to get help
Right.
because
Love that.
yeah, pelvic floor dysfunction really just eats away at your life. Like it's way worse than, you know, a lot of other things that can happen.
Right. Well, Bree, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation, and we'll definitely do a part 2.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bree.
Thank
Of
you.
course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.